how do you know when your brakes are bad? Now, brakes are a fairly common maintenance item, so it's very common for them to go out eventually while you're driving your car, and it's a good idea to know exactly how to diagnose that. There's really only two ways to know. Some cars have some sort of indicator that tells you, the driver, or that the brakes are bad. So it could be a sensor in the brake pad, and when it rubs on the rotor, it'll have an indicator light on the dash. I know BMWs have that. Mercedes used to have that. They may still have that. I'm not sure, other than that, which other cars may have that. Older cars, and even not so old cars, had a mechanical indicator, which means they had this metal tab that was bent and down into the pad basically, and when the pad got to a certain level, that little metal tab would rub on the rotor, cause a squealing noise. People would bring their cars in to the mechanics to get checked, and so that squealing noise would basically annoy people, and it was a way to force people to take their car into the dealership before the pads actually got really low. Now, a couple other ways you can tell that they're bad without actually doing a physical inspection, which is the only way you can proactively ensure that the pads are still good. If you don't have any kind of sensor or indicator, you have to pull the wheel off. Typically, you may have rotor wheels that give you enough access. You can look at the caliper and the pad and see if there's enough meat left on it. Then you know that the pads are good. But if you can't access it, you have to pull the wheel off and you just do a visual inspection. So what you're basically looking for is you have the pad. This is from the rear tire, so it's a lot smaller than like from the front. They have a certain thickness here. This is what they call the backer plate on this side, and this is the wear material, friction material. Once this gets really low, it's about time to change it. So you can see the thickness is about 1/2 inch almost to start with. Once it gets down to about 1/8 of an inch or so, you may want to consider getting proactively getting your brakes changed. Now, if you don't end up doing that, there's a few other indicators that your brakes aren't in great shape. Eventually, once this friction material wears down to nothing and you're just on the backer plate, you will hear a metallic grinding sound coming from either the front or the rear of the car, depending on which tires are out. Could even be from one side or the other. Sometimes, as the car gets older, one caliper or wheel is working more than the other, and it wears down faster. So you hear a when you apply the brakes. That means that you're on your backer plate. You got to get your brakes changed immediately. Your rotor is pretty much toast. Another way you could tell that your brakes are bad is if you get a vibration in the steering wheel under braking. So you go to stop and you feel a vibration in the steering wheel. What that is, your rotors are warped. Now, I'm not going to go into the specifics of what a warped rotor is. The terminology isn't exactly accurate. The rotor itself is not actually warped. It has to do with friction material and various other things. Now, the rotor is this part of your brake system, and this is what the pads are actually gripping. So your pads are going on either side of this rotor and squeezing it with the caliper. And so this turns with the wheel. The brake pads stay still with the body of the car, and they grip and they drag along each other. If you start feeling a vibration under braking, it means the rotor itself needs to be either resurfaced, which can be done, or replaced. If you're going to do the work yourself, I suggest just replacing the rotors. They're not very expensive for passenger cars. They tend to be somewhere in the range of $30 a piece. Getting them resurfaced probably will cost you 20 bucks, so might as well just get a new one. That's my opinion anyways. But if you're taking it to a shop, they're going to charge you considerably a bit more for the parts. It may, and they will measure the rotor for you, and they can tell you if that's resurfacing is an option. So basically, in summary, there's a couple different ways you can tell your brakes are bad. If you have a car with a sensor, it'll tell you ahead of time that your brakes need to be replaced. Beamers, Mercedes, maybe some other luxury vehicles have that option as well. If you start hearing a grinding noise in your brakes, definitely needs to be replaced. If you hear a squealing noise or they're just kind of loud, you may want to get them checked if you don't feel comfortable, so you can either do that yourself or you can take that to a shop and have it done. But more than likely, does not mean the brakes are bad. They just may be dirty, so they just may need to be cleaned. And then if you feel a vibration in your steering wheel or even in the back of the car, if you just feel a vibration as you're stopping and you're applying the brakes, it goes away when you release the brakes, that means your rotors are bad. If you feel it in the steering wheel, it's probably your front brakes. If you feel it just in general, like in the car, it's probably your rear brakes. The best way to check ahead of time, again, is to remove a wheel and inspect the thickness of the friction material on the pads themselves. Usually you have to do that visually. If you feel confident enough, if you can just stick your finger in, you can kind of get a sense of the depth of how far it is from the backer plate to the rotor. That can give you an indicator as well. That's how I usually check them. If I can just reach in, I can touch the backer plate of the pad. That's how I'll inspect them. I don't actually do visual, I can do it by feel. If you're changing the brakes yourself, my suggestion would be, especially if you have quite a few miles on the car, go ahead and just replace the rotors. Don't even worry about getting them resurfaced because it's fairly inexpensive. You can go to places like Rock Auto, for instance, and get new rotors for about 30 bucks. Typically for most sedans, just regular cars. For trucks, it's a bit more expensive. It may be worthwhile to have them measured and resurfaced for you if they're quite a bit more expensive than that. $50, $60, $70 rotors like you'd get like on a truck. And I think that pretty much covers it. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. I'll try to get to them as soon as I can. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up. I'll try to do more educational videos like this, so if you want to see more of this, please subscribe and I'll try to do more. If you have any suggestions for other videos, you can leave that in the comment section below as well. All right, I hope this was helpful and take care.